Welcome to Affordable Foundations Legacy Impact Through Housing, the podcast that explores how housing shapes communities and creates lasting legacies. I'm your host, Cecilia Casio, and each week we'll dive deep into solutions, challenges, and opportunities in affordable, attainable, and workforce housing. From current housing models to innovative approaches reshaping the industry, we'll explore the policies, investment strategies, and community-driven initiatives that are making a real impact. Housing isn't just about buildings, it's about people, opportunity, and the future we're creating together. We believe everyone plays an important role in affordable housing, whether you're a real estate investor, developer, policymaker, property manager, or someone passionate about creating positive change. Affordable Foundations is your go-to source for insights and inspiration. So let's break barriers, redefine possibilities, and build a legacy together. Hello, and welcome to Affordable Foundations Legacy Impact Through Housing. We are part of Multifamily Media Network. I'm your host, Cecilia Casio. Today's guest is a true powerhouse in affordable housing finance. Lisa Gutierrez, Senior Vice President, Director of Business Development for Affordable Housing at U.S. Bancorp Impact Finance, the Community Development Financing Division of U.S. Bank. Lisa leads the national team responsible for affordable housing, equity, debt, multi-investor fund originations. With nearly 2 decades of experience in LIHTC, tax-exempt bonds, and multifamily housing finance, she's been instrumental in driving innovation and inclusion across the industry. In 2023, Lisa was inducted into the California Housing Consortium's Hall of Fame, honoring her leadership and lifelong commitment to creating equitable housing opportunities. Lisa, welcome to Affordable Foundations. I'm so honored to have you here.
Cecilia, thanks so much for the invitation to have a conversation about affordable housing. This is something that I'm passionate about, and whenever we can educate and tell people about affordable housing and the impact that it has on people's lives, the better we are. So I'm excited to be here today.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to dig right in because I'm really excited to hear everything you have to say. Um, and I will try to keep it on point so we can move along. But you'll find that I get excited about listening and learning from you guys. Every time I have a guest, I learn just an enormous amount of information. So, Lisa, you've had an incredible career leading originations for affordable housing. And I think if you could just share from your vantage point how large institutions or just institutions, how they are evolving and shaping the future of affordable housing and how you see that impact being made.
Well, affordable housing is a true public-private partnership, and I think, what the ways that U.S. Bank is playing a role in that is that we're providing capital to our developers to build affordable housing. I'm proud of the platform that we have here at U.S. Bancorp Impact Finance. We have been lending and investing in affordable housing for over 35 years. I mean, the low-income housing tax credit program was enacted in 1986. So if you do the math here, we've been kind of a partner from the start. This is developments from very deeply affordable housing all the way to your workforce type housing that's housing your teachers, your public service employees, folks, so folks can live closer to where they work. So I'm really proud of what we've done here at US Bank. We've invested over $21 billion over the course of our time in this space. So that is something to be just truly proud of in the what we've built. And we're a trusted advisor. I think we are always called upon for thought leadership in the industry, just how we work on solving problems when it comes to development. So, again, I'm really proud of the team that we have here at US Bancorp Impact Finance, and how we're helping is truly, full stop, providing capital, which I think is key to getting these developments off the ground.
Great. That's And in the past 5 to 10 years, in terms of what it takes to get these deals financed and closed, how has that changed? 'Cause as an investor, I go back and forth and I see the differences. And I'm always looking at things from, like, this point of view and this point of view, um, but really want to get your insight on what you're seeing has changed.
I think we have seen one, many more players in this space, which I think is good because, the banks have been a tried and true partner in investing and lending in affordable housing. But now we have other new entrants into this space, which I think is good. We need more folks, with the legislation that was enacted this summer. We have more tax credits flowing in the market. We need as many folks to be in this space as possible. And I think that that has changed over the last 5 to 10 years. Just new entrants, which is great for our industry. I think also just the way that we approach financing these developments has changed. If you notice, the capital stacks and the amount of funds and layering of funds has changed over the years. It's been maybe you had tax exempt bonds and tax credits, and then you had your financing through your bank. Now it's you can see developments that are kind of like a multi-layered approach to financing, which it adds complexity, adds time in the closing process. And so I think just that has changed and evolved. I think we've also got innovative when it comes to building. You see the modular building that's getting done, and all of the enhancements that have been brought in that construction aspect of things. So that's definitely changed over the last 5 to 10 years. So I think that also the public agencies have really kind of banded together with developers and even lenders and investors to try and streamline the process to building affordable housing. I think we've been, wanting that convening for a long time between all of those groups, and that's definitely something that I think has enhanced it. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's many challenges to building, developing, building, and managing affordable housing, but I do think that we've definitely made some enhancements over the last 5 to 10 years.
Lisa, are you there?
Yes,
Okay, something happened there for a minute. You
it
stopped and it still keeps
froze for
recording.
a second. Okay.
Yeah, you stopped where the challenges from managing, developing, and financing affordable housing. So I will make sure that we go through and look at this section because I'm not really sure. I'm showing all bars. Like I immediately looked down to my internet and I was showing all bars, so I'm not really sure what's happening. But this is a great thing about recording because we can go back and edit.
Yes, excellent.
um, so I want to pick up there and ask you, what inspired your passion for affordable housing? Was there a defining project or moment that made this work personal for you?
Well, a little bit about my journey into affordable housing. I definitely fell into this space. So I graduated from Cal State Sacramento, Stingers Up. I love Sac State, and that's my alma mater here in Sacramento, California. And I graduated with a public relations degree, never thinking that I would go it kind of into the finance space, always thinking that I would be working at some PR firm and working on press releases and all the likes. Well, all throughout college, I worked actually at US Bank as a teller in the branch, and I learned so much about customer service, about problem solving, all the things. And then when I graduated from college, I was able to get, look for PR jobs. Those weren't coming my way. So there was a role that came up at a local community bank where I would be able to kind of learn the basics of financing. I had the experience as working as a teller, but I wasn't making loans and I wasn't doing all of that. So work at this local community bank got my kind of experience in learning how to underwrite transactions, to underwrite borrowers, all the like, getting the basics of finance. And then after a few years, there was a role that opened up at US Bank in their commercial real estate group, which is an assistant relationship manager role. So I would be helping underwrite what I thought was office, retail, hospitality, all the likes of commercial real estate. I got the job, very excited about it. And on the first day, they hand me this book that says How to Finance Multifamily Housing with Tax Exempt Bonds. And I said, what have I done? What am I going to do? And they said, well, we need some help in this affordable housing space, where we're, building, or we're lending to folks that are building multifamily affordable housing. I said, well, let's give it a shot. That was in 2006. Fast forward, we are almost 20 years I've been in this affordable housing space and kind of moved my way up the ranks. And I will say that, from the get go, this is high finance, very fast paced, exciting work, but we're also doing something rewarding at the end of the day. We're housing folks, that, providing that foundation because without a stable, clean, dignified place to live, folks can't really build a foundation for financial success at the end of the day, right? How can you keep a job or caretake for your family, or do all of those things without kind of a safe place to rest your head at the end of the day?
Right.
So that's why I stayed in this space. And I will tell you that the affordable housing finance community is probably they're fierce competitors because we all want to do all the developers projects and finance them, but we are one of the best collaborators when it comes to problem solving. We don't gatekeep on information. We're always willing to work together and collaborate to solve an issue to finance more housing. So that's also kind of was infectious and had me stay in this industry. Is just there's some amazing people and leaders in this finance space. I'll also tell you that at US Bancorp Impact Finance, I mean, this is the best team in the business. I'll tell you, I'm going to just be, my pride point. We have some of the most, uh, you know, thought leadership, innovation, folks that are willing to solve problems for our developers. We take on some of the most complicated developments from, historic rehabs to kind of twin new market tax credit and affordable housing LIHTC deals, to just, I would say traditional workforce housing deals. Across the spectrum, we're doing all of this. And I think, the team has had me, stay in this business a lot just because it's just a great collegial group. And, I'm not getting out.
I think that is a great story, and I will tell you that's where passion comes from, and when you have passion, you can do anything. Um, I tell people I was a so thank you for all that. I was a 18-year-old mom on Section 8 that saw the stigma of being on a program, and I knew then I wasn't going to be on Section 8 the rest of my life. But that help was a foundation to give me a place to live so I wouldn't be in a home with a bunch of family members, it's my daughter and I.
Hmm.
Um, and so I didn't mean to stay in affordable housing, but every position that I grew into, it just had a piece of affordable housing in it. And I said, well, that's just God's way of keeping me where I'm supposed to be because I understand it. And when you say the foundation, that's a reason I named this podcast Affordable Foundations, because I believe that every life and every experience that these children are in, it's everybody, the seniors, the veterans, the homeless, the families, but I think of the children a lot because I'm like, they have a place to lay their head.
Hmm.
That is so much more powerful to somebody in their growth, being able to get up to go to school. And from a bank perspective, I know that sometimes, and from mine too, like as an investor and a, you know, property and asset management, say expert, but experts there's
Mm.
limited learning. I'm always learning, but that is my 30 years of experience, and I know what these homes do for people, and I know
Mhm.
the impact it makes. So when organizations out there are as passionate about it like you are, it really warms my heart because it's because of those type of lenders or the person that lent the money to this landlord that rented me the house on a voucher, and it was, there was stigmas to that. So being able to separate those things and watch people grow and provide them different experiences, it starts at the foundation and it just goes from there. So thank you for being so passionate about what you do, because that represents a culture you're in, and that is phenomenal. So thank you for that. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. I mean, it is, and I really appreciate hearing kind of your story as well in this, and how affordable housing has helped you, become who you are today. There's so many stories like that that I wish that we continue to tell. And that's, we continue to tell that, from an advocacy perspective about affordable housing. And I think it goes hand in hand. It's not just the housing, it's also, the supportive services that are being provided at these developments,
Mhm.
from financial literacy classes to job training to after school programs for children. It's not all about the housing. It's also, how are we engaging with the residents at these developments so that we can have them continue to move up, as far as kind of building their lives, and
Right.
kind of achieving that financial stability.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody about, like, they mentioned to me, well, there's always tax credits for apartments, but not for homes. And I'm like, well, there are programs out there for homes. But the reality of it is, if we want to move people from generational living on in these housing programs, we have to give them different life experiences. We have to look at what we're providing them before we start building. What does it really look like? Can we build cubbies in the closets? Can we? They may have beds, but buying bedroom sets can be very difficult.
Mhm.
For a single mom, that's hard. Like, I know, I lived it.
Mhm.
So I explain to people when I'm consulting for them or talking to them, like, look at it from the user end. Like, as an investor, I know I need value. I know what I want I want the
Mhm.
granite. I get that. But let's look at adding, counter type bars that they can also use as a table, because they
Mhm.
can't always afford to buy a table. But if we can set a bar that is not, above their head, and they can sit down and actually not just eat there, but do their homework there. There's so they can eat as a family. Um, Being in the property management side, I would walk in and I would see these kids sitting on the floor, um, doing their homework.
Mhm.
It wasn't a matter of their mother was out spending their money. There's some stigmas that, well, they're not using their money. You don't know what's happening. You don't know the things that are happening in this home. And you know that as a developer, as an aspiring developer, I continue to work on that, is I'm going to make sure that we keep the end user in mind, while still creating that value for my investors and owners and everybody that's involved, because a it is a collaboration of everyone, to make these things work and to truly be effective and create an experience that lets people grow out of those systems. That is like, I keep working on this business model of, like, how am I going to be part of this impact, right? Because we all have to be part of it somehow. Um, and
Yeah.
we want to keep building these developments. They help, that, like supportive services. All of these things are great, but what's our goal, and how are we reverse engineering into that, keeping everybody in mind? So I can go on, and I'm not gonna, like, because I feel so passionate about it, and I again, I thank you guys for being as passionate as we are out here in this world.
Yeah, but thoughtfully thinking about the design aspect, that's not something that, we get involved in here on the finance end of things, but to hear you talk about how you're creating functional spaces that are not just about kind of the real estate in the spaces, it's about creating those spaces for families to gather, connect, do homework, all of those things. So that's just a great point of view from your aspect to
Mhm.
share about how you're thinking about development.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Now, as a woman and a leader in finance, what lessons have you learned about perseverance, influence, and representation in an industry that, let's call it what it is, still largely male dominated?
Yeah, no, so I think you're right. I would say the affordable housing industry maybe is slightly different to that, just bringing, a very diverse from thought and from all places, folks coming together to build, develop, finance affordable housing. But I will tell you that, I gained a lot from mentorship when I was kind of coming up in the ranks.
Mhm.
And so that's something that I always make time for when there are folks that reach out. I have folks within our own team that reach out that want to talk about their career or if they're thinking about, ways that they, which avenue should they take. I have folks that reach out to me on LinkedIn that I have never met that are trying to, find a way and inch their way into this industry, which whenever anybody says that, if they are willing to opt in and self-select into the affordable housing finance industry, that I always make time for that conversation. But I think it's just really important to remember how I got to this place and then be able to kind of pay that forward in
Mhm.
all of the things that were afforded to me. Just being able to have an advocate that's in my favor and not necessarily kind of within the bank. It could have been outside of the bank too, but just somebody to bounce ideas off of that was always in my corner, that wasn't afraid to tell me, knock it off, or, you're overreacting about this, or
Yeah.
you should lean into this more. That radical candor is important. And I always took all of that feedback in stride. So what I would tell folks kind of coming up in this industry is that, ask for feedback. Don't be, surprised if you get something back that maybe you weren't expecting, but take that, and really build upon it for your own career and kind of how you're setting goals for yourself because that feedback is valuable from folks that you trust that really kind of have your best interest at heart.
Yeah, tell me what I need to hear, not what you think I want to hear,
That's
right?
right. Yeah, I mean, how am I going to get better if that's the case, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, what's one misconception you wish people understood about how affordable housing finance really works?
Yes. Well, I would say I thought you were going to say misconception of affordable housing because there's always that too. But I think people don't realize how long it takes to get these developments from A to Z coming out of the ground in construction. And I think, the one of the biggest things that is, when I talk to developers and hear from them, one of the biggest things that's kind of the impediment to getting housing on the ground quicker is time, right? Time of, the timing of funding and the passage of time really can hinder a development. You can have new building codes that get enacted by the time that you're trying to get out of the ground. Then you have to redesign your entire project, which costs money and costs time at the end of the day. So I think folks, think that this housing can get built quicker, faster. We can do that. And I think the industry can innovate around that. And I know that there are ways that we can think about doing this faster. But I think um, biggest misconception is just how long it takes to get some of these developments underway. Some developers, they'll tell you they've been working on a development for 10 years and
Yeah.
they finally are getting it built. So I think that's just people want it done faster, but it really does take a long time to get this done, and I wish we can do whatever we can to chip away at that.
Yeah, it really is. That's where you have to work together with the property management, the community, the leaders, the advocates. I mean, it really is as, someone who, like I said, was on the PMAM side, getting out there to the community, because that can kill a deal.
Oh,
Um, and you know, that's a whole nother podcast session or
yes,
but it
definitely.
is, like, it is. You gotta get out there and just really get involved, and you guys on the back end are like, "Okay, well, we're working on this, but we can't move forward until we get this." I've seen that, and 2 years, I think it took us on one project before we even got movement on, like, 5 things that needed to happen before we could move to that 6th step, and, and that's time is money. Time
Yes,
is money,
absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
sometimes these things don't even pencil out before you even finish the financing, like, after everything comes back and you've gotta rework the numbers, it's like, "How are we gonna make this work?" But where there's a will, there's a way, you know?
Yes. Well, and I would say, affordable housing developers are not just commercial real estate developers. They are community organizers. They are experts on policy, zoning, entitlements. They, have to be experts on finance and kind of pulling the capital stack together to get the development built. That is far different than I would say conventional commercial real estate development. There are so many other things that need to be done to lay the groundwork before you can even get to the point of applying for an award for tax credits and bonds. And then again, before you can even get out of the ground for construction.
Yeah. That there are so many different things there. I think it's like I said, 2 years is a number that sticks out. Like, even before applying, like you said, applying for the awards, right? So, um, and
Yeah, and
hope to get.
yes. And I would say, here at US Bancorp Impact Finance, I mean, we work with, folks that are lining the affordable housing finance top 50 developer list to folks that are maybe working on their first or second development. So I think that's something that we get to get the perspective of developers of all kind of shapes and sizes, and then being able to provide our expertise along the way, especially for folks who maybe don't have as many developments under their belt. So that's, something unique about our program here.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear for somebody like me, right? Because that is hard to come by, and you come across all these hurdles. But like I said, where there's a will, there's a way, and you just got to keep chipping away. So to our listeners, this is a great point that she has. You never know who's willing to work with you, and you just have to keep putting yourself out there and networking and learning these things. And here's a bank that even works with those that don't have a great deal of experience under them. So good to know.
Yeah.
Um, I think or say I think, but how do you think that financial institutions, and you kind of just answered that, um, can better partner with local developers and those that have a mission driven operators to close the gap? And that was my next question, but you kind of just
Yeah.
answered that, is being, working with a number of different, developers.
Yeah, I think, what financial institutions need to understand is that there are your large developers who have, very large balance sheets that you'll they're tried and true. You've been working with them for a very long time, and we love those clients. We have many of them, and they are, part of our the fabric of, our success today. But then we can't underestimate the developers, that are more granular, working in local neighborhoods. You can't underestimate a developer who really understands the neighborhood they're trying to develop in. You often see folks coming from out of town, out of state, trying to develop in a community, hitting roadblocks left and right because they don't know the neighborhood that they're developing in. They don't know the people,
Right.
what they need. Just listening to those folks. So I think that is really crucial that you should not underestimate. They may not have, the largest balance sheet out there. They may not have a ton of developments under their belt, but they know the neighborhood like the back of their hand. And so that's something that I think is just, we look for in the developers that we're working with, especially kind of on that more regional, local side of the house, is that, understanding your neighborhood and the folks that you're serving is crucial to the success of your development.
into the operations because you have to operate it, long after you develop it and understanding that and what it looks like and what that future looks like. Now, I know we don't have, crystal balls to be able to tell us that, but that really is key when you have a clear understanding of that neighborhood and those that are going to be your customers in those homes. It is, you know, it is critical and pivotal to the long-term success.
Yeah.
Yeah, leasing it up is great. Now, not, not when you got to do all the paperwork and all that, but it's keeping it maintained and keeping that project going long term, is just as important.
Yeah, you bring up a really important point because, the mechanics of the low income housing tax credit program, it's a 10-year tax credit with benefits kind of getting realized over 10 years, but it also has a 15-year compliance period. So
Mhm.
you're right. You can build it. It looks beautiful. You can lease it up, but how are you going to maintain it over the long run? It has to be sustainable. The improvements that you're putting inside those units, they need to withstand at least that 15-year period and hopefully beyond. So we look for a lot of that. I mean, operating expenses, how is this going to look over time? You have to make sure that not only is it going to be a great development, it's going to lease up really quick, but how is it going to operate over the long term? Because that's just the fundamentals of the low income housing tax credit program is that you have to make sure that you can maintain this for 15 years.
Yeah, I think like these days too, we're looking for innovative ways to also staff,
Hmm.
these properties because I think that the workforce as a whole for the affordable side is slimming down. So one of the things that we work on in my group is continuing to train people and teach them how impactful they or the impact they can make long term because it really is a great field to be in and it can get difficult when you have a conventional property and a tax credit property and in some areas you've got rents that, even today, this happened in 2008, we dealt with it back then, but today you've got some areas where your conventional rents or your tax credit rents are competing with your conventional rents.
Hmm.
Well, and you know what happens with the market and people, tend to shift down a bit when they have to cut expenses. So somebody's going to apply at that non 100 paper document required property over the one that requires all the documents. It's just what it is. So you really have to become innovative and also innovative in how you staff them and how you keep those properties maintained. I mean, we work a lot on predictive maintenance and all that. I know that's not the side you guys work on, but it is something you think about if you're financing them.
Yeah,
You
well,
know,
and to think about, the job of an on-site manager. You're not just collecting rents, you
right?
are a counselor, you are, sometimes you serve as the like a uh, over when children come home from school and they're not supervised. I mean, you're serving as a caretaker.
Yeah,
You have so many different tasks, and it's like that piece of it people don't realize it is a hard job to fill and to keep, and there's lots of turnover in that space because of that reason is that we ask those on-site managers to do so much,
yeah,
whereas on a conventional development that's not the case. So I think those people deserve an award, those on-site managers, because they are really taking on a lot when it
yeah.
comes to kind of managing these affordable housing developments.
100%. I'm glad you recognize that. Not many, and I don't want to take away and say not many, but there is really not an understanding of that. And I train my people to understand the value they bring to the table. I'm like, look, I understand you have these other things that you don't believe in yourself, but when you can manage a multi-million-dollar deal without a financing degree, you already have some things in you that you just don't see. That's number 1. Number 2 is you are elevating this another level from your conventional managers because now you're having to maintain a whole different compliance, a whole different set of issues that come along sometimes with some of these properties and understand how to make them work. Because the bottom line is, we can't say, hey, well, it's an affordable property and this has happened. No, like, how do you continue to find solutions? So, teaching that mindset of ownership and valuing themselves as managers and on site team members is critical. So I think for our listeners, if you're on-site team members out there, thank you so much for what you do each and every day in keeping our assets flowing and going. It is because of
Absolutely.
you that these things happen out there. So just know that we do appreciate you and we do acknowledge everything you do.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. They make the world go round at the developments, so they're
Yes.
super
Yes.
important. Yeah.
Well, I know we're coming close to an end here, so I've just got a few more things here. If you were to look 5 years ahead, what innovations in affordable housing finance do you think will redefine the market?
I would say I think we've hit on it, but just getting housing built quicker, more cost effectively, that would be a game changer, I think, in our space. There are other things, as part of the mechanics of kind of how the tax credit program works and the mechanics of that and the structure, maybe making the duration of the tax credit a little bit shorter so that we can attract additional investors into this space, which I think would be great. But it all comes back to time. The time that it takes to jump through all of the hoops, and then all of that, equates, like we talked about, is to the cost. And time is
Mhm.
money at the end of the day. And the longer it takes for me to be able to get my project finance, interest rates will rise and fall. Building codes will change, and you'll have
Same.
to pivot. So all of those things, I think, if we can just, find a way to streamline the process of building, that will be key. And there's a lot of smart folks that are working on this right now. And I'm excited that folks are leaning into this because I think, it is the one thing that's kind of, I would say, an eyesore on our industry. There are large publications that write articles about the cost of affordable housing, and technically, you know, the cost is the cost, but trying to understand what goes into that, I think, is key, and how along the way we can streamline those efforts, I think, will be key to just advancing housing and putting it on the ground quicker and housing folks faster.
Yeah, just keeping people out there who are constantly looking. I was looking at a 3D printer. I was looking at two different companies that did 3D printing, looking at the boxable type, setups. I prefabricated homes. I mean, like, you have to just keep putting yourself out there to learn what is going to work for whatever the situation is, whatever that land is, whatever that zoning is. Well, and know that you gotta keep going out there and learning this stuff and pushing this stuff out there because everything's changing. I went to a meeting 6 months ago and reached out a couple of months ago, and they said, "Oh, yeah, well, we decided we're not gonna do that now." Okay, well, we've been talking for 6 months, like, why didn't you tell me?
Yeah. And like what's passed in that time, building materials, the cost has gone up. Everything has happened in that time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So you just
Yeah.
keep going, but, don't give up, people. Keep moving forward and, connecting with people like, Lisa and US Bancorp is a key, um, thing for you to do because I think it helps you understand, like, today has helped me understand so many of the different pieces that I may not have really paid attention to, but just listening to you, it's just like a sponge soaking it all in. So thank you, Lisa. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining and sharing your incredible insight and leadership here. For those who are listening today and want to learn more, connect with you, what's the best way for the audience to reach you?
I think the best way is probably on LinkedIn. You'll see me, I'm always shouting out our team. We're across the country, attending many events. And so I would love to tell you more about our platform and what we've been doing. And so I think folks can reach out that way.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, to our listeners, remember affordable housing isn't just about buildings, it's about people, purpose, and progress. It's about building a legacy for future generations. Thank you for listening to us today. And again, thank you, Lisa and US Bank Corp, for allowing you to be here with us today and provide such valuable information. I am truly grateful for this podcast and everything that you provided us today.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. Appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. That's a wrap on this episode of Affordable Foundations Legacy Impact Through Housing. I hope today's conversation sparked new ideas and gave you a fresh perspective on the role we all play in creating sustainable, thriving communities. Affordable housing isn't just about buildings, it's about people, opportunity, and the legacies we leave behind. Every step we take to improve access, challenge stigmas, and drive solutions brings us closer to a future where everyone has a place to call home. Make sure to subscribe to Affordable Foundations on your favorite podcast platform and share this episode with others who are just as passionate about making a difference. Follow us on social media for more insights, updates, and stories from the field. And before we go, a special shout out to the incredible teams working on the front lines of our multifamily properties. The property managers, maintenance teams, leasing staff, and all those who make housing possible every day. Your work is the foundation of stronger communities, and we see you. We appreciate you, and we thank you. Until next time, let's keep building a legacy that lasts.